In today's video, I'm going to share 5 tips to help you build internal validation and self-trust. Growing up and even into my teens and early 20s, I really depended on other people to help me manage my self-esteem and self-worth. If somebody didn't come to my birthday party, if a boy didn't like me back, if I heard that somebody was saying something negative about me, it really sent me into a tailspin. But when we think about where this need for external validation comes from, it makes a lot of sense. External validation was important in childhood because you needed to be accepted by your caregivers in order to stay alive. And if we look even further back than that, human beings in general have needed to be accepted by their tribes for the same reason. If you got kicked out of the tribe, you were going to. Our brains are still wired with this belief that we need external validation in order to live. But in the modern day, as adults, it's not necessary, and in a lot of cases, it can actually hold us back. So that leads into my first tip, which is to be honest about how external validation is actually making you feel. I know for me, when I was really dependent on that validation, there were some really high highs when somebody liked me back, or when somebody invited me somewhere, or they complimented my outfit. It's this amazing feeling of, oh my gosh, I'm worthy, people like me. But those highs don't last forever. Eventually, you get bad feedback from somebody, you're rejected, and it's like a roller coaster. You're down in the bottom, these really low lows. That emotional cycle, that emotional roller coaster is super exhausting. It's not sustainable because you can't maintain external validation all the time. So even though it seems like that is the way to make yourself feel good and to have high self-esteem, it's actually probably doing the opposite. This honesty is an important first step because it's going to be easier for you to detach from that need for external validation when you realize it's not actually making you feel as good as you've been telling yourself it is. My second tip is be honest about if you're somebody that you like. If you've been living for external validation for so long, it's likely that you have put yourself on the back burner to become somebody that you think is going to be more likable, that is going to be more accepted. In order to cultivate internal validation and start to accept yourself, you actually need to be who you are. You need to make sure that you're living based on your values, based on what's important to you. And I don't know you, so I can't tell you exactly what things you might need to change, but it can be as superficial from the way that you do your hair and your makeup and what clothes you wear, all the way to the behaviors that you're participating in. When I was in my early 20s and I was really trying to get out of this trap of being who I thought I needed to be for everyone else to like me, I needed to change the way that I was dressing. I stopped drinking alcohol because I realized I didn't even like drinking alcohol. I was just doing it because that's what everyone else was doing around me, and that's the thing that you do to hang out. And along those same lines, my third tip is to get to the root of some of the beliefs that you've carried from the past. Like I said, the need for external validation starts in childhood. So it's very likely that there are some beliefs that you hold about yourself, some behaviors that you engage in that are actually connected to something that happened to you in childhood. So if you can get to the root of those, you're able to realize that they were never your beliefs to begin with, and you can separate yourself from them. And you can start to replace them with what you would actually like to believe about yourself and the person that you would actually like to be now, and not just being a series of patterns that you've had since childhood. My fourth tip is that after you've done that self-exploration, you have to allow yourself to be vulnerable. This means to allow yourself to be praised and accepted for who you actually are, but also be okay with the possibility that you might be rejected and judged for being that person as well. I know from personal experience that in the beginning especially, that can be extremely terrifying and painful. And obviously, it might continue to be a little uncomfortable and disappointing over time. I'm not promising that you're ever going to reach this place where comments are not going to hurt your feelings, rejection's not going to hurt your feelings. We are human beings with emotions. Those feelings of disappointment and hurt are natural. But the key here is your brain is wired to think that rejection is literally going to cause you to die. It has a hard time differentiating between true threat and something that is just mildly painful, like modern day rejection. You have to remind yourself and teach yourself that you're going to be okay. You have been rejected in the past. you have been judged in the past, and you didn't die. You are going to make it through because you are resilient. You are not dependent on that external validation to keep you alive or to give you worth as a person. My fifth tip to build internal validation and self-trust is to put yourself in situations where you have to rely on yourself. So situations where you have to rely on your own company, your own thoughts, and your own opinions. If you find that you're a person who has to call somebody else every time you make any tiny decision, that's a pretty good sign that you lack self-trust. You don't believe that you have the ability to make good decisions, so you rely on external validation to make your decisions for you. If you find that this is a really, really big problem in your life, I would start really small with this exercise that I talked about in another video, which I call the yes/no exercise. So you're going to look at something in your refrigerator or your pantry if you'd rather, and you're going to ask yourself, do I want to eat this? Whatever your first reaction is, yes or no, you're going to go with it. You're not going to question yourself. You're not going to try to talk yourself out of it. And then from there, when you're feeling confident in that yes or no response, then you can move up to things like haircuts or buying new clothes or making any life decision. This exercise helped me personally to build more self-trust and more internal validation. I really think it is a good starting point if you are just overwhelmed with the idea of making decisions yourself. Let me know your thoughts on these tips in the comments. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.